y'all, my name is Jasmine Jones. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and you are now watching Black Girl Therapists in the Wild, and this is a little series I like to call Therapist Sips and Reviews. Today I am sipping on some organic green juice from Trader Joe's because I felt in the mood to be a little bit more healthy today. Yes. And we are reviewing Lovecraft Country Season 1, Episode 8, Jig-A-Bobo. And they did it, y'all. They did it. They basically went there and went all the way to Emmett Till dying. And the whole episode was just a lot. There's a lot of things happening in this episode that was, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I feel like at the same time, though, it was just a lot. So let's get started with Jig-A-Bobo. So we start off the day though, at Emmett Till's funeral. There are people, just a crowd of people on this hot summer day. I didn't look it up, but I'm assuming it was a hot summer day that he had his funeral on. Everyone's sweating. There's a crowd of black folks. The police are trolling the crowd, telling them not to be in the street and things like that. Dee is standing in the middle of the crowd looking shocked and not knowing how to deal with all of the things that are happening. One woman comes out of the church after she's seen Emmett Till's body and vomits into a bucket. Tick, Letty, Ruby, and Montrose is there. Montrose is handing out water. Tick is still feeling some type of way about Montrose, so he's kind of, shading him a little bit. When he gives him his water, he gives it to Letty instead. And Ruby is just feeling some type of way. Ruby and Letty, or maybe it was just Letty, just feeling some type of way about having Dee there. Letty, I know in particular, was just like, she doesn't need to see this. Montrose is like, this is the rite of passage for all Negroes, and so she's gonna have to learn about this at some point and things like that. And Dee is just standing there, and this little girl, y'all, I'm glad they gave her, she can act. This little girl is an actress. Bitch. I want to see her in more things. I want to see her do more things. It was amazing. Anyway, she's standing there just staring at Emmett Till's picture in front of the church, just, looking like she's about to have a full-on panic attack. And they're slowly walking towards it when all of a sudden she asks, "What's that smell?" So apparently, Ruby replies, "Well, it's the hottest day of the year." So apparently it's him. It's his body smelling because it's hot, and all the things that are traumatic and overwhelming and upsetting when we are, a child that, I'm sorry, we shouldn't have to see. She didn't have to see that. She didn't have to be at that funeral, but whatever, it's fine. Anyways, then Dee disappears from the group. The group splits off. Letty goes back to the house. Montrose, I think, goes back to George's shop or whatever. Tick says he's going to look for Letty somewhere, but we see where he goes. And then Ruby stays in line so that, in case Dee comes back. So Ruby is the only one that actually sees Emmett Till's body up close. Next, we go to Dee. She is standing outside of the ice cream parlor arcade type situation, just looking in the window. And, you can see her facials are just everything. Like, this little girl can act. She's an actress, bitch. And she's just going through it. She just doesn't know how to process through the fact that they're telling her mom is still on the guide trip, but she knows something is going on with her mom. Her mom, Hippolyta, has still not come back. Okay. And then she's walking away from the ice cream parlor. These two little black girls come out and they're laughing and just enjoying the day, trying to be happy in this horrible ass heat and death and destruction. And it just shakes Dee's soul, and she picks up some rocks and starts throwing the rocks at the little girl. And then she goes, "Ain't nothing funny!" And then she starts like cackling, chuckling while looking distraught. It's a lot. This little girl can act. Can y'all? I need to see her in more things, please. Anyway. She goes into the alley and she's walking away, like, after like venting some of the emotions that she's had pent up in her from just everything, just from being black. And she hears the police pull up behind her. The police, this is like the worst scene. You know I don't like bodily fluids, you guys. You know I cannot, unless, you know, you're my nigga and we're doing special things. Outside of that, I can't get through this. Oh gosh. Okay, so she's walking into the alley. The police pull up behind her. They corner her. One dude gets right up behind her. Like, his whole front side is pressed up against her back. It's gross. And the other dude is in front of her, and they're asking her where her mom is. Does she know about magic? And Dee's just like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Da-da-da-da, and da-da-da-da. And she's just like, I don't know where she's at. She's on a guide trip. She's not back yet. Magic is in fantasy books. What are they talking about? Da-da-da. So as she's talking to the officer in front of her, the one that's like right up on her ass is like bending over and drawing these little things into the ground on each side of her feet. They look like stars or something. And then it's the chief and his deputy, and then the one that owned the lodge. And then this man, this demon. Give me a minute. I can do this. I can do this. He takes this hot loogie, just big as all day, and puts it on this little girl's forehead. And then he does an incantation. I was lost after the loogie part. The incantation, I don't know what the fuck he said, but she's just like, and after they leave, she's just on the ground like playing with, and I was done for a little bit after that. I had to take a moment and step back and be like, you know what? This scene here is not for me, okay? And so then we go to Letty. She's at the boarding house looking for Dee, and we see Jig-A has shown up, and she's sitting in the parlor waiting. So we just see Letty going around the corner, and then she sees Jig-A, and I think she asked her like, who are you or something, and then we go to the next scene. So Jig-A is here, y'all, and I know she was a monster and whatever the fuck, but how that nigga Tick did her was just wrong. Okay, but we'll get to that. Because that pissed me the fuck off. Then we see Tick. He is at the cemetery. So he is meeting up with Christina. And basically, he makes a deal with Christina that, oh, if I give you the key to the Ori, then, you know, you can give me a spell to keep me protected and all this other stupid shit. And the thing is that, you know, I'm guessing Tick is feeling that since the Ori is broken, then it's fine to give her the key. But we see in the previews for the next episode that the Ori, the lighthouse, the telescope place, they were back there and it was working. So I just felt like that was stupid. Like, but I mean, he got some protection spell and it worked, so that's good, I guess. Anyways, we go back to Montrose. He is in his apartment and Dee shows up, and Dee is just mad. She's like, where's my mom? And you guys are lying to me. And Montrose is like, you know, trying to tell her this is all normal about Emmett, and, you know, not normal, but like this is what black people have to go through. And he's trying to tell her about like how he had to experience his friend dying from racist and all this other stuff. And then Dee locks herself in the bathroom. So Dee is in the bathroom and she's just scrubbing the shit out of her head, like, oh gosh. I mean, the loogie is gone, like you can't see it, but you know the remnants, the feeling of it is there. And as Montrose is talking to her through the door and telling her about his friend that died and all this other stuff and how she can talk to him, Dee turns the music on to drown out his words. And then there's this book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, underneath on the shelf, and there's this little black girl on there with her sprouted braids all over her head, you know, whole Jig-A-Boo look, and she changes into this monster that's like suffocating the little white girl on the cover. So before she ran off from the cops, there was this poster on the wall of this baseball player or something, and she looked up at it, and I think its eyes moved and followed her, and that's why she ran off. And so now this little picture is, you know, also moving and stuff, and it freaks her out. She puts on this baseball cap. I don't know what team it is. I don't watch baseball. I think it's the Yankees. I don't know if I'm wrong. Let me know. Probably she is something else and I'm wrong. I don't watch baseball, it's boring. So she freaks out and climbs out the window, and then Montrose opens the door and sees that she's gone. Next we see Ruby. She is at William's house. So she went back to William's house and she's got the key to get into the house. And she drops it on the ground. And this white man from across the street starts hassling her, asking her who she is, where she's from, is she the maid, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I ain't no fucking maid. And the white man gets mad, like, what the fuck did you say to me? I'm so glad that I don't live in that time, because now, at the very least, if I mace one of these racist motherfuckers in the face for approaching me, you know, it's less likely for me to get strung up in some tree. Less likely, not completely 100%, but it's less likely. So, yeah, I can walk the street most of the time without being harassed or bothered as a black person. Most of the time, not always. Yeah, it's better than it was back then, but we still have work to do. So there you go. I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm just saying I couldn't have lived back then. I couldn't have lived in slavery times. I don't have the fortitude for any of that. Anyways, William pulls up in the car. William, Christina, whatever. And basically saves Ruby from the guy and says everything's fine. And then they go in the house, and then Ruby has sex with William, but she doesn't want, well, first William bathes her, and then William tries to kiss her as a black woman, and she's like, no, I don't want your mouth on me. And then she takes the potion, and then she fucks him as Ruby White. And then as she's having an orgasm, she's like melting and the whiteness is coming off, and then she's done. And it was a lot. I just felt like, you know, I feel like when I first saw it, before it was explained later on what could have been going on, I was just kind of like, is she trying to hide behind whiteness? Is she trying to forget that she's black? Is she trying to, but then when it was explained, I was like, well, maybe she just could want this. Maybe she just could want to be with and in and around and with this person, and she feels bad about it, so she's fucking as a white bitch. I don't know. But it was a lot, and you know, this is about identity. This is about knowing who you are as a person. This is about, if you don't know who you are when you experience trauma, other things can come out. It's all the stuff. So it was interesting, and it was kind of gross, but it was not as gross as the loogie that came out from that man's mouth. I don't care. Bodily fluids is real. That's a real thing that can happen. Your body just melting off of you. That's fake. That's pretend. Shit like that doesn't just happen every day, but people are all just walking around the street spitting on the ground and shit, okay? So no, it's real, and it's gross to me. So the gory part is just kind of like, well, I mean, I don't see that every day. Like, that's not gonna happen in real life, most likely. So it wasn't as gross to me. So there you go. I know. We then go back to the boarding house, and Tick is there, and Tick sees Jigga's shoes outside, and he's like, oh shit. He goes inside the boarding house. Jigga is sitting across from Letty, and they're just like, Letty looks pissed off. Jigga just looks sad in the face, just sad. It's sickening. So then we go back to D. So after he walks in the house and sees Letty and Jigga at the table, we go back to D. And the thing is like, we're skipping back and forth between all these people in a rapid pace, so the scenes aren't as long in between. But you know, there are some scenes that are important that are longer, but this one was a short scene. Then we skip back to D, who's at the train station waiting for the train, and she sees these little Jig-A-Boo girls coming up the stairs, and they look like the shit from Us, only like they're painted as Jig-A-Boos. So their body movements, the flipping and the tick-tocking and the, you know, pop-locking, all of this shit. I think they're real little girls playing that, so they're very talented little girls. Look at them doing all that pop-locking and stuff. But she sees them coming up the stairs. She freaks out. She asks this white man next to her if he sees them. He's like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? And she runs off and gets on the train, and you know, it's a lot. I guess they put the Jig-A-Boo spell on her or whatever the fuck, but it was a lot. Then we go back to G.I. and Tick and Letty, and Tick is trying to figure out how G.I. knew that he was gonna die and all this other shit. And G.I.'s like, you know, he thinks she's a succubus, and she's like, well, we call it the fox spirit where we're from in Korea. And, you know, when she has sex with men, when they have an orgasm, she sees their whole life from their birth till their death and stuff. So I guess she can see like the future and whatever the fuck and all this other stuff. But she said that it's that particular thing that happened with her and Tick never happened before. And Tick's just feeling all types of ways every time she mentions having sex with him, every time she mentions the tentacles that came out of her, all these things. He's having conniptions. He cuts her off. He doesn't want her to talk and all this other stuff. And so Tick is like, well, how am I going to die? What's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. And G.I.'s like, I don't know. I don't know how you're going to die. And he's like, why are you here then? Da, da, da. Why are you here? Just a fucking asshole. I know what he experienced was traumatic and upsetting and, you know, weird and all sorts of things. But this woman is here because she loves you. See, this is why you don't do things based off of trauma. You don't, because he hasn't dealt with things and she hasn't dealt with things and Letty hasn't dealt with things. And so now he's just being an asshole. And she's just sitting there looking sad. Like, she came all the way from South Korea because she was worried about you. And she was scared that something bad was going to happen to you. And so now she's there to make sure you're okay. And you're just being a total fucking asshole to her. And it's like, you know, maybe just what happened to him traumatized him. You know, it would traumatize anybody. So I understand that. But I just hate to see people be mean to people that, you know, can't help who they are. Like, she can't help that she's that thing. She didn't kill you. She made sure you weren't dead. So at the very least, you know, I would be freaked out. Okay, so if it happened to me, I would be freaked out. But I would still understand this person has feelings for me and that this person prevented my death, prevented me from dying, and like cared about me and shit. So I would be like, I don't want to be with you or anything, but, you know, I appreciate the fact that you care and that you want to make sure that I'm okay, but I can't do, because whatever the fuck you are just scared the shit out of me. But, you know, that's because I've learned how to articulate my emotions regardless of what happens and stuff. He just goes up to her and says, what we had wasn't real. And then he runs upstairs to Letty. And him and Letty are having an argument because Letty's mad that he didn't tell her about, you know, G.I. and about possibly him dying and, you know, all this other stuff. And Letty's just like, well, you know, and he's like, well, I was just trying to protect everybody. And he tells her that he gave the key to the Ori to Christina, and Letty's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why did you give her the key? Why don't trust Christina? And da, 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 da. And you know, Letty's just like, you know, you're trying to protect everybody, but everybody's except for you has been dying. And so he was shook by that and goes back downstairs and is like, you know, he like leaves. And so Letty follows him and she's like, where are you going? Where are you going? And he's like, I'm going to save everybody and fix stuff. It's like that stupid ass men protector shit. It's like, why don't you just all of you get together and figure this out? Why do you have to be the one to go off and save everybody and do all this stupid shit? Two heads are better than one. Why are you going off and doing this as a man? Like, you know, so it was upsetting, but at the same time, I could see why he did it. But at the same time, I still felt like it was stupid. And it was a lot of things. I just feel like, you know, don't be impulsive and emotional when you make life-changing decisions. How about that? How about we not be impulsive and emotional when we make life-changing decisions? Because then you'll slip up and think that you can do all this by yourself, just like in every other movie. And you'll do all this by yourself, and then you end up dead, and other people end up dead because you thought. But that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But, you know, whatever. He leaves and goes off, and Letty's just standing there talking about, but wait, we can do this together. Don't go off by yourself, and da-da-da. But he leaves. Next, we see Ruby. She's with Christina. And Ruby's just going up to Christina and she's like, you know, how do you feel about Emmett Till? Do you care? Do you feel anything? And Christina's just looking at her like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then Ruby's like, you know, I just want to know that you feel as hurt as I feel. I just want to know if like you feel, you know, treated fucked up in this world and can't be yourself. And you know, she said that she basically was like, I couldn't even fuck you as a black woman because I felt bad about, you know, being protected by your privilege and all this other stuff. I had to fuck you as a white woman to forget I was black today because of all the shit that's been happening. And then Christina, I feel like both are true. So Christina comes up to her and she says, I don't think that's why you had sex with me. She says that she doesn't care about Emmett Till and she doesn't care about all the other ones that died and things like that, or was arrested or beaten or whatever. She basically says that, I don't think that's true. That I think you had sex with me because you're a woman who, even on today, wanted what she wants. And I think both are true. I think that she was hurt and upset and traumatized by having to see Emmett Till like that and having to hear once again about black tragedy and white people and racism. And she ran to her boo. I mean, think about it. Like, you know, it happens in abusive relationships. It happens in regular relationships. When we're hurt and we're upset, we want to run to our boo and be held. And then maybe she did feel guilty about it. And so she didn't want to do it as a white woman. She did it as a black woman. But at the base of everything, she just wanted to be loved today because she was sad and hurt and traumatized. Because that's what we do. When we're sad and hurt and traumatized, we run to our boo. And I think that she has feelings for William Christina, and she wanted her boo. She wanted to be held. She wanted to be kissed. She wanted all that gentle shit. And so she ran to her boo. So I think it's both. I think that she felt sad. She felt traumatized. And also she wanted what she wanted. She wanted to run to her boo. And I think Christina saw half of that. She didn't see the whole thing. She didn't realize that it could be both things. So yeah, that's what I saw in that scene. She wanted her boo. She wanted Bae to comfort her after she, you know, saw this mangled child's corpse in the fucking hot church, and the church smelled like dead people. You know, all the things. And she got comforted, and it is what it is. Something else Christina said was that, you know, because Ruby, when she first took the potion, said that she felt like, you know, she was being unmade. But in reality, you know, well, not in reality, but from Christina's perspective, when Ruby was having sex with her, Ruby White was having sex with her, and her body was melting off. Christina said she saw somebody being reborn. You know, like maybe you aren't being unmade, maybe you're being reborn, and maybe that's a part of it too. Like maybe she wanted to feel anew after experiencing so much. She wanted to go through this intense physical pain and transformation type feeling to maybe take away who she is and how she's feeling about being a black woman. So, you know, like self-harm, when people harm themselves to feel better, you know, like I want to do something that like people will harm themselves by cutting, or sometimes, you know, people will do it in a more safer way, like people that get tattoos and stuff for that particular reason. Like I'm tattooing myself, and every time I do it, I feel new. The pain cleanses me. So, you know, maybe it's that type of situation where the pain felt cleansing for her. At the same time, she still wanted her bae though, because she was sad and her feelings were hurt and she was traumatized and all this other shit. So yes. Next we go to D. She is at Letty's house. She took the train all the way to Letty's house to find her. I guess she's looking for Tick, actually. She wants to tell Tick about what's going on with her. Tick isn't there, and she's calling Letty. Letty doesn't see the little Jig-A-Bobo girl, so, you know, Letty's just thinking she's coming over looking for Tick, and, you know, but Letty's trying to find Tick and trying to do stuff herself, so she's brushing D off, like, you know what, girl, I don't know what, you know, go in the house and get you some water and shit, because when she tried to tell her about the Jig-A-Bobo girls, she started coughing and she couldn't breathe and all this other stuff. And so Letty's just looking at her like, what's wrong with you? Go get some water. So then she goes to the house and she sees her mom's car, because now it's her mom's car. You know, it used to be George. George is dead. It's her mom's car. So She looks inside, and as she's looking inside, the little Jig-A-Bobo girl jumps up on the window and scares the shit out of her. So she jumps on the bike and rides the bike away. Then we go to Tick. He's with Montrose. It's nighttime now. There's a blackout across Chicago, like the lights are going off and things like that, and they're sitting on the curb, and Tick basically is just asking Montrose, like, did you cheat on my mom? And Montrose is like, no, I didn't cheat on your mom, and you know, I was faithful to her. I only started seeing men after she died and things like that. And he's telling him about how he was traumatized when he was 8 because the pastor of his church was found out to be gay, and it was just a rumor, but the police came on a Sunday morning and dragged him to the insane asylum, and he was just like, well, I chose to live instead of being murdered or taken to an insane asylum or being in jail, and he just did the best that he could. And when he found his mom, it wasn't the ideal thing, but they both were running away from you know, lack of family, you know. So his mom was running away from the massacre in Tulsa, and Montrose was just like trying to find a family that he can love and would love him. And so they came together in that vein, just finding love and stuff like that. So I mean, you know, it makes sense. He said he didn't cheat on her though, so now we're back to who's Tick's father. We don't know. We don't fucking know. And I was like, they could have used that. They could have used that, but it's like, no. He said no, it's not. And so I'm just like, okay, y'all, okay. Who's Tick's father? So then Tick tells Montrose that he went through the portal too, and he went to the future, and he basically he knows that Letty's pregnant, and the book that he has is from his son. And somebody commented that, please, if you have read the book, no spoilers. No spoilers, because I was just like, this is too like certain. Like, this sounds too certain. So somebody commented on the last video and was like, well, I think Tick went to the future to get his book from his son, and da da da. And I was just like, oh, well, that's an interesting theory. And then come to find out, so if you read the book, don't spoil it, because now I'm just like, I kind of knew ahead of time, and it kind of ruined it a little bit. And I was just like, oh, because I haven't read the book yet, and I'm kind of want to read the book after the show just to see like what matches up and what doesn't. And so yes, please, if you read the book, do not comment below with spoilers, because it ruins it. When I watch the next episode, it ruins it. But I appreciate you for, you know, your enthusiasm and wanting to talk about, you know, the story and things like that. But anyway, so Tick got the book from the future, and it's written by his son. And so he tells Montrose this. Next we see Letty. She's sitting in church. She's praying for Tick. She's praying for Mamie, Emmett Till's mother. She's praying for protection for both and things like that. And Christina shows up. So she called Christina to the church because she has the negatives of the pictures she took of the pages from Adam's book. And she's going to give Christina the negatives if Christina will provide a protection spell for Tick. And Christina refuses to do it for Tick, but she will do it for Letty. And she puts the protection spell on Letty that was on her father, so that she could be invincible and nothing can harm her. And so she puts the mark of Cain on Letty's side. And I find it interesting that, you know, you're praying to God and asking him for protection and saying this magic is of the devil, but then you're using the magic to protect yourself instead of, you know what, it's fine though. It's fine if that's what you want to do, but it seems kind of like, you know, an oxymoron, a little hypocritical and all those things, but you know, it protected her, so there you go. Next we see Dee. She's sitting on her bike across the street watching the police officers, the chief and his deputy that put the, you know, spit spell on her and shit, the Jig-A-Bobo spit spell. And she's watching them, and she's, you know, waiting for them to leave. And she's sitting on her bike, and as she's sitting there, the little Jig-A-Bobo girls are coming up behind her, and they're almost to her when she goes off and follows the cop car, you know, down the street on her bike. So I'm guessing they're going slow enough that a bike can follow them. And then we go back to Montrose in the apartment, and him and Tick are about to do the spell. Tick tells him like how he got the book. Some woman in a hood gave him the book and things like that, and all this other stuff. And you know, it was like a few seconds he was in there, so it wasn't like this long extended trip like Hippolyta had. So he was standing there, white people were marching and protesting, and then some woman in a hood gave him the book and pushed him back through the portal. So, and I don't know, I think it was a white woman in a hood. It could have been Christina, who knows? And pushed him back through the portal. And so he's telling him how the book ends, and apparently some names were changed, the gender of some of the people were changed, but basically Tick is sacrificed by Christina so that she could have immortality. And so that's how the story ends. And so he's asking Montrose for help, and Montrose is basically like, well, I will give my life for my grandson, for my son and my grandson. So they do the spell, you know, he stands in the circle. Apparently Montrose is dyslexic, so he's having a little trouble reading, and Tick's just like, I didn't know you were dyslexic. You didn't tell me you were dyslexic, and da-da-da. And Montrose is like, I've always been dyslexic. So Tick's like, well, what other secrets are you keeping from me? And Montrose is just standing there staring at him like, should I tell him about George? Should I, you know? And Montrose is just like, he doesn't tell him. He's just like, get in the circle, hurry up. So he does the spell. They read the spell. Montrose reads it, and nothing appears to happen. So Tick feels like, oh, the spell didn't work. Montrose feels like the spell didn't work. I felt like the spell didn't work because, you know, when Letty got her spell on her side of her stomach, all this shit happened, but nothing's happened when Tick and, you know, and Montrose did the little spell, so whatever. So then we go to D. She is at the lodge. She's a bad little bitch. She breaks into that, but she's like, ugh, kicks the door. I feel in my spirit that that's that's what happened for me. She didn't kick it open. She just opened it forcefully, but you know, kicks the door open. It says, who the fuck are y'all? Where's my mama? Da, 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 da. And the cops are just staring at her, and I'm just like, she just got the whole ovaries to do all of this. She just is a brave child. She cussing the cops out, fuck you, you motherfucking white pigs, and da da da. And they tell her, you know, and she's like, how do I get this spell removed? And they telling her, you got to do something for us, you got to get the ori from the house, and da 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 da. And she's like, fuck you, you white pigs, and da da da. And then she spits on this motherfucker, and you know, it was gross, but at the same time it was vindictive and it was courageous, so I'll let it go. But yes, and then she storms the fuck out. The police officers don't follow her. The chief is like, let her go, she's already dead, I have other plans for other things. And so it was like, you know, she's just a little brave child. She's a good actress. I need to see her in other things. I need to see a whole movie led by her. We need to see like a whole movie of Hippolyta in outer space and the other dimensions. Like, I need to see all the things now, okay? I need to see separate shows, man. Don't do us like you did Watchmen. This is a 1-season series where we don't do anything else after this. Like, no, don't do that. Don't fucking do it's fine. If they do that, though, I'm gonna be so mad. I'm gonna be upset. I'm gonna be bothered. Anyway, next we go to Christina. So this shit is weird, and I'm just figuring, like, you know, because I was wondering, like, why would she do this? Like, is she doing this for Ruby to kind of understand where Ruby's coming from? Is she doing this because this is a part of a bigger plan, a bigger spell? But anyway, she has these two goons bring barbed wire and a wheel and, you know, basically kill her like Emmett Till was killed. And they beat her up, they tie the barbed wire around her neck, they put the wheel into the water, and one of them's just like, I don't understand why somebody would want to be killed like this. And then, you know, they push her into the water, and it comes back, she comes back up out the water. Like, they shoot her in the chest a bunch of times too and push her in the water, and she comes back up out the water, and she's like, fine, everything's fine. And I'm just like, is this how she's trying to understand how Ruby feels? Is this a part of a spell? Is she in love with Ruby, and this is like her trying to get what's going on with her? Like, I'm confused by that whole scene or whatever. But, you know, whatever. We didn't see D. She is at George's, like, travel shop, garage, whatever. And she is, you know, locking all the doors except for one. And she's preparing for the little Jig-A-Bobo girls. And she's also drawing pictures of them. Because I guess she can't say what they are. So at least she can draw the pictures. So if somebody finds her or whatever, they'll know. And then we go to Letty. She's downstairs looking at pictures, sexy pictures that she took of her and whatchamacallit, Tick. And Ruby comes downstairs and they start talking. And basically, you know, Letty tells her that she's pregnant, and then Ruby tells her that she knows about magic and she knows everything that happened, and that she trusts Christina, and that she wants Christina to teach her magic and all this other stuff. And Letty's just looking at her like, why are you trusting Christina? But before they could go into a full conversation, someone from upstairs in the boarding house starts yelling at them and says, Letty, come downstairs, and da-da-da. So they go downstairs, and the police officer's outside. The chief of police, the one that owns the lodge, is outside the door talking about, oh, there's some black Muslims or whatever in here organizing and stuff. They got word of it. So Letty is just standing there, and then one of the deputies walks into the house and looks around, but when the police chief tries to walk in, he can't get in because there's a seal on the door from the voodoo woman. Yes, go on, honey. So the deputy walks out, the chief of police walks away, and then they start shooting into the house, and you know, it's a lot. Everybody gets down on the floor. You know, that's what we learned when I was little. Get down on the floor when you hear gunshots, and I still do that shit till this day. And we go back to Dee. She's at the garage. The Jig-A-Bobo girls are in there now, and she's hitting them with this big pipe. And I guess Montrose lives above the garage or store or whatever, and he hears Dee screaming, and he goes downstairs, and he comes up behind Dee and grabs her because he doesn't know what she's swinging at, and he holds her down. And then that's when the little Jig-A-Bobo girls grab her, and her skin starts to like turn black and rotten looking and all this other stuff. And then we go back to the house where Letty is, and Letty like sits up, and the bullets are just ricocheting off of her because she has the invincibility spell on her. And basically she's just looking around, and then I think Tick is walking down the street towards the house, and he sees all the cops like shooting at the house, and so he stops, and the cops see him, and they turn around to start shooting him. And Letty sees this, and she runs outside screaming, and she's trying to get to Tick, I guess, to jump in front of him because she's invincible and shit. And then as the bullet is almost about to hit him, one of the mini-eyed naked mole rat monsters jumps up out the ground. So the spell worked. The spell worked. It just wasn't going to work until he was actually in danger. So the mini-eyed naked mole rat monster starts eating all the evil white police officers, the chief of police, all the people. They're dead. They're dead. There's blood splattered everywhere. I don't know how they're going to explain this away. Like, you know, oh, we didn't kill we don't have the teeth to rip into these people. And so they rip into the police, they kill them all, and him and Letty are trying to get away. They're covered in blood, and then they're on the front lawn, and after the mini-eyed naked mole rat monster kills the police, it runs up to Tick, and it stands in front of Tick like it's his little pet, and Tick puts his hand on his head. That's when he realized the spell worked. So yeah, it was a lot. A lot of shit happened in this episode. And apparently the goal of Christina is that she wants to be immortal. She wants to be more immortal than even her father could be. So that's like her goal, because when she was talking to Letty, Letty was like, do you want to be a god? Like, you know, because, you know, she was surprised that Letty was in church praying, and that's why I was like, but you're praying, but then you're calling her to put a spell on you. Like, what you're saying, this is evil, but then you're calling. So she was like surprised Letty was even in there, and Letty was like, well, it all sounds the same, you know, resurrection, and how is magic different from God, and all this other stuff. And Christina's just like, well, I mean, they're just people doing these spells, and it's the meaning behind it, it's the intent and all this other shit. And so Letty asked her, like, so do you want to be God? Is that what you want to be? And that's when Christina says, no, I just want to be immortal. And so that's the goal of Christina. I don't know how it's going to turn out, because, like, you know, Tick said at the end of the book, Christina sacrifices him, and then Christina refused to put the invincibility spell on Tick. She puts it on Letty instead. So it's kind of like, is she going to sacrifice him? Like, what's going to happen here? And then the whole thing with Ruby trusting Christina, like, she's right in the previews to the next episode, she's riding around the car in Christina, and Letty's trying to tell her, don't trust this bitch, what are you doing? And Ruby's just like, no. So, you know, Ruby's caught up in the emotions of everything, and she's not thinking clearly. But then she also doesn't understand who Christina is. She wasn't there when Letty and Tick and George had to first experience Christina and her people. So she's just going to believe what she wants to believe for now until it comes back and bites her in the ass. I mean, like, and I'm just, let me know what y'all think about why Christina tried to kill herself the same way Emmett Till died. What is that about? Is that like, I'm trying to understand how Ruby feels? Is that a part of a spell? Like, if you read the book, don't put what it is. I want guesses and estimations. Don't put exactly what it is if you read the book, please, because then it ruins it. I like the surprise and I like the conversation. But I think that that says something, like, if it really is about empathy and trying to understand where Ruby is coming from. Like, why did it have to be about all of that? Why did you have to do all of that? Like, does she not have empathy? Does she not have, feelings? Is she a sociopath? Like, what is it? Like, you had to do that much to understand where she's coming from? Like, what's that about? So yeah. This was like I said, there's a lot happened in this episode. I'm still kind of reeling from everything. I'm still upset that they used Emmett Till's story. Not upset like they use it, just like it's triggering. That's all. It's like triggering for me. I don't want to see that. But I understood why they used it. And so yeah, it was a really good show. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And I hope you all enjoyed this review. And yeah, let me know what you think. Later days.